Webinar. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, from wherever you are in the world. It's great to see already so many people in today's webinar where we will talk about sustainability. And the idea that we have is no sustainability, no future. So that means if you as an organization, if your organization, with you as a manager, let's say, playing a role in that, do not take sustainability seriously, we think that you will be out of business in the future. So a bit of a bold statement, but that is what I'll try is to, let's say, give the arguments why I think is that there is no future without sustainability, but also that there's a lot of benefits and advantage in being sustainable. Would be great. Also, just a test, if you can all hear me. Indeed, I see, analysts, that you already, you know the drill. If you can send a message in the chat, your name, where you're from what organization you work for, what role you have. So it's great that everyone can see who is in this webinar today as well. If you want to raise a question, we will have time in the end for questions and answers, then use the button at the bottom with the question mark, click on that, and then type in your question. That makes it easier for me in the end, so I can present your question on the screen and we can discuss that. Okay, so like we said, there's no future for organizations that are not sustainable. You all know people who do not really care about sustainability, in this case, about the environment, because they don't feel like it's a real problem, or they don't take it very seriously, or they're not willing to work on it. Maybe even yourself, you have some doubts about, is it really that we as human beings have so much impact on climate? And let's say, what I would say is, even if you do not care about the environment, even if so, and where I believe that most of you will do care, but even if you would not care about the environment, then still, taking sustainability seriously will provide you with a lot of benefits, apart from the fact that you reduce, let's say, the impact on the climate. And what is the benefit? What we see is sustainability, a stronger sustainability agenda will increase your effectiveness, increase employee engagement. It will improve your reputation. You will get more funding. It will even reduce road crashes and generate cost savings. And in the next, let's say, 15, 20 minutes, I will sort of explain why I think that sustainability will offer all these opportunities and all these benefits for your organization. Maybe to start with, what we see is we take sustainability more seriously. So we get sustainability departments. There are some activities around sustainability, but it's important to understand, to realize that being sustainable is just the way you run your organization. It's just business as usual. It's not a department. Sustainability is not a hype that will be over in a couple of years. It's not an event, it's not a campaign, it's just the way you run your organization, the way you live your life, the way you do your business. So in every step, in every decision you make, in every plan you make, you look at sustainability and just embed it in the way that you work. And if we talk about sustainability, we talk about three types of sustainability, sometimes called the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit, but in fact, as most of you will do not work for a profit organization, commercial organization. So, but still, it's about economic sustainability. Even your organization has to deal with limited budget. So cost efficiency is extremely important. So it's economic sustainability is how can you run your organization in a way that it's most, let's say, cost efficient? How can you run the organization in social sustainability? So this is about the people. This is about how do you protect your people from road crashes? How do you deal with beneficiaries that they are protected? That's so. How do you look at diversity, inclusion, etc.? That's what we call social sustainability. And the sustainability that is most used, of course, is the environmental sustainability. How do you take care of the planet? So maybe 4 reasons why we say sustainability is your future license to operate. That's a bit nicer said than no sustainability, no future. But in the end, it has the same message in it. So what we see is that more and more governments, regulators, push companies, organizations, anyone operating in a country or in a region to be more sustainable. So some examples here. The East Africa community set to harmonize vehicle emission standards. We know, for example, in Kenya, where as from this year, Euro 4 emission is the minimum standard for vehicles, which is a huge step up and something that you cannot deny. You just have to deal with these requirements from regulators. You see, even in some regions, Europe, for example, where car manufacturers get huge fines, billions of dollars, if they are not able to reduce the emissions, the carbon emissions of the vehicles that they produce and sell. So regulators will play a stronger role and put pressure on your organization to really be more environmentally sustainable. Action groups as well. 2 great examples where Shell, based on a lot of pressure of action groups, who in the end went to court, where Shell was ordered to reduce their emissions sooner, quicker than they actually had in their own strategy. So action groups can play an important role as well. And you think, yeah, of course, this is Shell. This is Shell, so this is a big oil company. And Jordan, I will try to slow down a little. It's a big oil company, so of course they look at it. At the same time, there can also be action groups who will look at the aid and development sector and say, this is odd, that as an aid and development organization, for example, in crisis related to climate impact, whether it's flooding or drought, that you respond as an organization, and while responding, you contribute to climate change because the type of vehicles that you use, because the supply chain that you have. So there's also possible at a certain moment action groups, maybe local action groups, will say, we don't need the humanitarian organization anymore because they only contribute to climate change, which will impact our country. So action groups will impact you as an organization as well. Governmental donors. As most of you will know, for example, the EU, or ECHO, that is the aid arm of the European Union, one of the biggest funders in the world, has set minimum environmental requirements for all organizations that they fund, mandatory as from this year. A huge guidance where they say, okay, these are the minimum requirements that we have. In that document is even a lot of detailed descriptions about how they look at fleet management. But they say you always have to do vehicle sharing where possible. You choose the lowest emission vehicles. So they really have criteria. And as organizations, the people who are responsible for dealing with governmental donors have to prove that they deal with fleet management also in a sustainable way. So there's more and more pressure also from the side of donors. The last one, so we said donors play a role in your future license to operate. Actions group play a role. Regulators play a role. And the last one is it will improve your credibility. So if you, like we said, respond to the impact of climate change, there's a crisis and that's directly related to climate change, then not contribute as an organization to climate change. It's not an easy task. You can't say, no, okay, then we don't do vehicles anymore. Important is that you think about how do we slowly, or with big steps as well, improve our sustainability, in this case about environmental sustainability, in order to be less impacting while responding, let's say, to crisis. And sustainable development goals, there's many of them. Most of your organizations deal with one or more of the sustainable development goals. So if you advocate for the achievement of these development goals, then you cannot, let's say, make things worse yourself. You have to lead by example, to have to show to the world that this is how you can do it. Okay. So there's 4 reasons why we say that is your license to operate for the future. You have to stick to that. Regulators will push you, action groups will push you, governmental donors will set, let's say, requirements, mandatory, and your credibility is extremely important to be able to still be in business, so to speak. Okay. But at the same time, that's all, let's say, requirements put on you as an organization, but it also offers many benefits. You can meet the expectations of your partners and funders. It will provide new funding opportunities. You will attract the best staff that you can find, and it will improve your reputation. And so let's look a bit closer into that. So, like we said, governmental donors will put more pressure on organizations to really, let's say, improve their sustainability. But even if they don't put these requirements on you as an organization, donors will see that if you make steps in your sustainability, that you have a better position amongst funders. So partners you work with, funders you work with will be happy if they see your sustainability efforts. Think about the future. What will donors do? Will other donors follow the example of the European Union, and will in the end be all donors or foundations set these requirements? And without that, we will not get any funding anymore. So be aware, talk to people in the organization who deal with donors to understand, let's say, what they expect from future expectations from donors, and already start incorporating that in your own environment, in your way of working. And again, you can surprise donors with your interventions and your actions. And that means that you will get a better position, because your reputation is better, your credibility is better. Donors see, well, that's an organization who takes it very seriously, so we want to partner with that organization. So you have a stronger position towards donors, so to get more, let's say, funding, and also to attract partners to work with, whether it's implementing partners or whether you can be an implementing partner for another organization. So it makes you as an organization more attractive. And not just for partners and donors, but also for staff. It is known that organizations who have a strong sustainability agenda, that these type of organizations are appealing for talented people. Well, for many people, but also for the best people that you would like to hire. So in your recruitment process, it is easier if you have a very strong sustainability agenda to attract people that you really want to work for you. And it's also the people who already work for you. It's also known that many people like it if the organization they work for really actively works on sustainability. So they are more engaged with, let's say, the organization. And the last one, last benefit here, is your reputation. And so it increases your reputation, close to credibility, and that means that it will offer all the opportunities I just discussed before. So you get more funding, it's easier to get the right people, it's easier to attract donors, and it's easier to stick to requirements of donors and partners. So it makes your life easier because of that, because you don't have to, let's say, have additional interventions to meet criteria of donors, for example, but also because you attract people who already understand, let's say, what sustainability is in your staff. It becomes part of life of people. So it's not like you have to push very hard to everyone around you to be more sustainable, but people just indeed run the organization, whether they are a senior manager, fleet manager, admin manager, driver, people to start working in a sustainable way, and that makes your life easier. So how can fleet management contribute to more sustainability? It's just some examples. And I do realize you can't do everything. And this list is not like this is everything there is. There is much more, but just some ideas on what you can do if you look at sustainability. So understand the transport needs. So have discussions with people who are responsible for programs, for missions, for projects that you support, and really understand what their transport needs are. So you will be able to provide the transport, only the transport that is really, really, really needed. So you will be much more effective in your transport. You will be have happier, let's say, colleagues from missions, projects, programs, and it, like I said, it will reduce the number of kilometers that you drive, because in the end, the cleanest transport is always the transport that you don't do. The most environmental friendly kilometer driven is the kilometer you don't drive. So avoid traveling unless really necessary. I do fully understand you can't say, oh, we don't travel anymore. But if, for example, have discussions internally that if people go somewhere for a meeting, is it really needed to go to that meeting, or can that meeting be done remotely as well? Have discussions on, okay, is this travel to wherever in the programs or to a camp or to a project, is it really needed, or can you do it, let's say, a day later as well, or can you combine 2 trips in one? Avoid traveling. If you can't avoid anymore, then do it in the most efficient way. Look at your journey planning, look what's the most efficient routing, but also share rides. Not always possible, but in many cases it is possible. For example, in many places where you operate, there is a lot of traveling from the capital to the airport, for example. So you can share rides as much as possible within your organization, but also with other organizations. And look at how you can, let's say, utilize your vehicle better, to have more passengers in one vehicle and not have, let's say, 1 passenger per vehicle. That will reduce the kilometers substantially. Shift. So avoid first, look at how you can reduce kilometers, and then shift to the lowest emission possible vehicles. Again, look at the context in which you operate. Look at the operational requirements that you have for a vehicle. And in that, given that circumstances, choose the vehicle with the lowest emission that you can find. So in a city, you operate mainly in a city. Some of the vehicles will mainly operate in a city. You can look at electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles. They are more and more available in every country of the world. And if you say, "Whoa, I'm really interested, but I don't know, where to find them, or I don't think that they are available in my country," reach out to me, and we can see how we can support you. Look at safety standards, and that means protection from the driver and the passengers, but also protection of, let's say, pedestrians or other road users. There's a big difference in standards of safety. If possible, use public transport instead of your own vehicle, or use bikes. We know, for example, in Lebanon, where there's organization now really working together in using each other's vehicles, they will see that they also have now electric bicycles to commute in Beirut in this case, and that really works very well. Optimize your fleet. Really look at what's the type of vehicle that I need. Do I need a heavy-duty 4x4 because I really need to go, let's say, outdoors, off-road? Or can I deal with a sedan, a normal city vehicle, because the environment is okay, let's say, to drive a vehicle like that? And of course, look at the size of fleet. If you don't measure You cannot monitor what you can't measure. You cannot improve what you cannot measure. If you don't have the information on how you're doing, it's impossible, let's say, to really improve your sustainability. Okay. Some more examples. I will run through it a bit more quickly, so we have enough time, let's say, for questions and answers. Is senior management sponsorship. So it's important for sustainability to have I would say the management system. Have your policies in place, run projects to improve sustainability, to encourage sustainability, to train people in what sustainability means, and lead by example. And that's the role of senior management. Work together with other organizations. As I said, joint action plans, vehicle sharing with other organizations. See if you can combine trips to the airport or to camps, to areas where a lot of organizations operate. Try not to drive with one driver, one passenger, unless there's really no other opportunity. Train people in safe and sustainable fleet management. Recognize good behavior, so see what people do and how you can recognize them for their behavior. And really look at recruitment. So think about what's the mindset that people should have if I want them to work for me, and hire the people who already have a mindset being very much aware of sustainability. We've already covered most of this. So sustainability will make your organization more successful because it will increase your effectiveness. You know better what transport support is needed. So you don't have more vehicles than you need. You don't have bigger vehicles than you need. You optimize the use of your vehicles because you know exactly what trips are being made, what plans you can make. So it will increase your effectiveness. Your employees will be happier because they work for an organization who is more sustainable. It will improve your reputation, like we said, which will enable you to get more funding, to find more partners. And it also will reduce road crashes. Very simple, because you have less vehicles on the road. But also because people are more aware of the driving style, which will reduce, let's say, road crashes as well. And last one, it will generate cost savings, which is not unimportant for most of you in times of limited budget, where many organizations have to deal with at this moment. So, in fact, the summary is a sustainability agenda is a no-brainer. You will be out of business if you don't, let's say, make serious steps up in the sustainability of your organization. So it's your future license to operate. It opens many opportunities, like we said. You get more funding, you have a better reputation, you have happier, more engaged people, you will reduce crashes, you will reduce costs. So it will only have, let's say, many opportunities as well. And so in the end, it will make your organization more successful. And again, don't forget, it's just part of your normal work. It's just business as usual. Sustainability is not an add-on. It's not a program. It's not a project. It's not a hype. It's just the way you do your business. So in every small decision you take, you look at sustainability. So some examples here, we said, if you plan your trips and journeys, really look at what are the needs. So I don't do more trips than needed. I don't use more vehicles than needed. That's normal fleet management, I would say, but will also, let's say, improve your sustainability. If you recruit your staff, recruit people with the mindset already that they are very much aware around sustainability and what they can do to contribute that to your organization. Some other example, if you rent or procure a vehicle, always look at what's the lowest possible emission vehicle that I can find. Yeah. So last one here then is we have, let's say, a lot of content on our knowledge platform about sustainable fleet management. And of course, for the ones that you do not know it yet, we have a sustainable fleet management training as well. So it's fleet management really from the perspective of how can I reduce the environmental impact of my fleet management. Okay, so we still have some room for questions and answers. And I see, so if you have any questions, please type them in. And I don't see specific questions. I see there have been some discussions on social media platforms where Fleet Forum members, managers meet and interact more frequently. That's definitely, and I see that George, yeah, great George, that you managed, that you made people aware of the Facebook group of Natalie. It's actually a driver recognition Facebook page, but there's a lot of, let's say, content on there. There's more than 1,000 members already. And we will send you the link, let's say, after this webinar in an email, so you can find that Facebook group. Next to that, what we are working on at this moment is the Green Me project. And Green Me is actually a platform where you can, let's say, look at what you can do as a fleet manager to improve the sustainability of your fleet. You set actions, but you can also benchmark yourself against other organizations. So how do I do it compared to other organizations in the same country? But it's also a platform where you specifically on sustainability can interact with other fleet managers. So you can share ideas, you can share the way that you improved your sustainability. You can chat. So that platform is under development at this moment, and later in the year we will launch it. So keep an eye on that to see how you can benefit from that. For now, indeed, there is, let's say, the Facebook group of Natalie, and that's definitely one that is helpful for everyone. Let me see. I see that there is 2 questions. And I will publish that on the screen. So, Samasa, by using public transport, sometimes we can reduce our emissions of carbon, carbon emissions, but it could be less safe for the staff since we do not know the level of drivers operate. No, I fully agree. So it's not like, always say that people have to use public transport. Any decision you make needs to be an information-driven decision. So think indeed about how safe is the transport? And if you do a risk assessment, say the public transport in the city I operate is known as being not safe, or the number of crashes that they have is very high, then indeed it would not, it would not be a good option to use public transport. So it's a matter, again, of in the context that you operate, see if it is possible to use public transport. And indeed take into account how much can I reduce emissions, but also, of course, take into account what does it mean for the safety of my people. Yeah, so I agree, Samasa, that you really have to do an assessment of the safety of the public transport in the area where you operate. Kenneth, how do we ensure buy-in from the stakeholders, given that many of us associate big SUVs with status? I think, Kenneth, that's one of the biggest issues that you will have to deal with. What can I say? It's a tricky one. One of the things that you, for example, could do is have discussions with them on the fact that you see and you know that governmental donors start putting requirements on organizations. And they want organizations to use the least polluting vehicles. I will ensure that in the link we will also send you, let's say, that part of the minimum environmental requirements where you see, okay, this is how at least the European Union looks at it. big donor for many organizations. That's one. In the end, if senior management doesn't take sustainability very seriously, then you have a big issue. It's hard. The only thing you can find some arguments to convince them, but that's the only thing that you can do. Have discussions with them, see if you can engage them, make them aware of the difference in emissions of this big SUV compared to another organization. Or I say, in many countries, because many senior officers mainly operate, let's say, drive in the city. So maybe an electric vehicle could work for them. We have some very nice electric vehicles which still have status without being an extremely polluting SUV. Let me see. I have okay. So Rami, that's the last one then. To make that a question. Lower emission means higher cost of vehicle, and this is a challenge for some organizations. I do agree, Rami, that the purchase price, so the price of buying a lower emission vehicle, most of the time means higher cost. But if you look at the total cost of ownership, then you will see that while operating this vehicle with lower emissions, that your cost will be much lower. If you, for example, drive a hybrid vehicle, then you will see that the fuel consumption is much lower. So despite the fact that that vehicle is more expensive, you will see that the fuel consumption is lower. So you spend less while operating that vehicle. If you, for example, look at an electric vehicle, in most countries, price of electricity is lower than price of fuel. Next to that, maintenance costs of an electric vehicle are substantially lower than of a vehicle with an engine. So despite the fact that it's much more expensive to buy while running it, it's cheaper. So look at total cost of ownership always from that perspective, and then you can decide whether a lower emission vehicle might also be, let's say, economically sustainable. Yeah. All right. I'm afraid that we have to stop here. I will look if there's any questions that we couldn't cover, and I will have feedback to people directly on that one. Thank you for your attention today, for your contribution, for your interaction. And next week we will have another Wednesday webinar on preventive maintenance. So hope to see you then again. Thank you all. Have a great rest of today, and hope to see you in our next webinar.